Hello, you're listening to Storytelling Saga, the podcast that shares stories. I'm your host, Allie, and this week I'm discussing The Secret Life of Bees, written by Sue Monk Kidd. And I first read this novel back in my sophomore year of high school for summer reading, so this was my second time reading it now. And it's just such a wonderful book, such beautiful imagery, and such a powerful message. And it's told in first-person point of view from our protagonist, Lily Owens. And it's set in South Carolina in 1964, the year of the Civil Rights Act. And it's all about Lily wanting to uncover the truth about her mother's past. Because sadly, when Lily was only 4 years old, she accidentally shot and killed her mother. And she has such guilt, and she has such ache and longing and missing her mother. And sadly, she is abused by her horrible father, T-Ray. And it's just so tragic, her home life. And then one day she finds a few of her mother's belongings up in the attic. She finds a picture of her and her old gardening gloves. And then this wooden block with a picture of a Black Mary. And on the back of it, it says Tiburon, South Carolina. So then she decides to go there. And she has a housekeeper named Rosaline who is going to register to vote. And then sadly, she ends up in jail because she gets arrested for disturbing the peace and just defending herself and protecting herself against these white men. And then they beat her up, and it's just so terrible. And then Lily ends up busting her out of the hospital when she goes to the hospital to get stitches. So then the two of them, Lily says that they're going to go to Tiburon to maybe uncover something and learn some truth, whatever she can learn about her mother. And then when she spots the Black Mary picture again at this general store, then the man tells her where it's from, this Black Madonna honey. And then she goes to the house of August Boatwright, and she has two sisters, June Boatwright and May Boatwright. And Lily just makes up this lie that they're going up to see her aunt, and she says, well, then you can stay here, and then we'll call your aunt. So then she gets to know these sisters over the span of several weeks. And August is a beekeeper, and she makes all this honey and ships it out to all these places. And she's so loving and kind and just this solace for Lily, because Lily sort of has a mother figure in Rosaline, but then she gets closer with August, and she learns all about bees. And when Lily first decides to run away, she's looking for signs, and then it says, I looked down at the bee jar still clutched in my hand and saw a teaspoon of teardrops floating in the bottom. I unfastened the window screen and poured it out. The winds lifted it on her skirt tails and shook it over the blistered grass. How could she have left me? I stood there several minutes looking out on the world, trying to understand. Little birds were singing, so perfect. Because T-Ray had told her that your sorry mother left you, and she doesn't believe him. And then in this moment she thinks to herself, I heard a voice say, Lily Melissa Owens, your jar is open. So she goes to find the truth. And in doing so, she learns about the Boatwright sisters and their way of life, and that they call themselves the Daughters of Mary, Mary the mother of Jesus. And they have this statue in their front room of a Black Mary, who August explains to her that it really was just a statue that fell off of a ship. But the people at the time, she tells her the story about the Lady of Chains, and that each time they tried to shackle Mary, she would just come unchained, she would be free. This was their saving grace, and that the sisters and the Daughters of Mary, they have this ritual where they pray to Mary and they put their hand on her heart. And then when Lily goes to do that, when June is playing music and she just stops, because at first June is cold towards Lily and she has resentment towards her, and Lily doesn't know why. And May, meanwhile, she sadly has all these issues because her twin sister, there were first 4 calendar sisters. There was also April, so it's April, May, June, and August. And then April, who was May's twin sister, sadly, she committed suicide when they were 15 because of the racism and just feeling so shut out and angered and hurt and unable to take it any longer. And then tragically from that, May feels like she's carrying the weight of the world's woes on her shoulders. That whenever she experiences grief, it's so intense for her, she can't handle it. So whenever there's something bad that happens, she feels it's happening to her. And then they came up with the wailing wall for her. And every time she goes out there and she writes down on a little piece of paper and just puts it in the wall, just all these terrible things to get rid of her troubles, to help her cope. And Lily also meets a boy named Zachary Taylor, who is August's godson, and he helps her around with the beehives. And when they first meet, he's just singing to Elvis, and she just laughs like at this boy, and she just knows that they're going to be friends. And then they start to develop feelings for one another, but because he's black and she's white, they can't be together. That guys like me could get killed for looking at girls like you. And it's just so terrible. And Lily talks about how she's so sick of it just because the color of your skin, and how racism sadly is still very much rampant. But with the bees, it's symbolic too, with Mary and with the queen bee, just about motherhood, and Lily wanting to learn about her mother, and hence the title, Secret Life of Bees, how Lily learns about all of these things that bees do to protect their queen and to gather pollen to make honey, and how August explains to her about bee yard etiquette. And it says, "She reminded me that the world was really one big bee yard, and the same rules worked fine in both places. Don't be afraid, as no life-loving bee wants to sting you. Still, don't be an idiot. Wear long sleeves and long pants. Don't swat. Don't even think about swatting. If you feel angry, whistle. Anger agitates, while whistling melts a bee's temper. Act like you know what you're doing, even if you don't. Above all, sends the bees love. Every little thing wants to be loved." And then, with May, sadly, she reaches her breaking point after Zach gets arrested because he wouldn't confess which of them had thrown the bottle over the white man's head. So then, sadly, all of them get arrested. And then Zach just, when Lily goes to visit him with August in jail, and it's just so devastating, and he's saying, "Are you writing in your notebook?" Because they open up to one another, Zach and Lily, how Zach says he wants to be a lawyer, and Lily's saying, "Well, I never heard of a black lawyer," and he says, "Well," she says that that's not real, and then he says, "Well, that's how you make things happen, by imagining it and then making it real." And then she says about how she wants to be a writer, so then he gives her that notebook so she can write her stories. And then she writes about Zach, the ass-busting lawyer, and sweet. But when he gets arrested, and then sadly, when May picks up the phone, she finds out that Zach is in jail, and they weren't planning on telling May, and then she just can't take it. She just shuts down, and she says she's going to go to the wailing wall, and then she says, just me, and then when she goes, and then when they go to look for her, unfortunately, they discover that she had taken her own life, and she's in the river, and poor June and August just break down. But then when they find her note, her suicide note, telling them that it was her time to go and it's their time to live, don't mess it up. And that's when August tells June that she should marry Neil, a man that she loves, but she was against marrying because her first wedding didn't work out and she was just always against getting married. So then she decides she'll get married. And there's a moment too with Lily when they're just running around the sprinklers, and then she just embraces Lily. So then her walls begin to come down too, and Lily begins to feel her love. And there's also a moment when Lily wants to feel the love from the Black Mary statue and to touch the heart. And she says, "I moved closer, so now I could see the heart on her chest. In my mind, I heard the bees fanning their wings down in the dark music box. I saw August and me with our ears against the hive. I remembered her voice the first time she told the story of Our Lady of Chains. Sends them rescue, sends them consolation, sends them freedom. I reached out and traced Black Mary's heart with my finger. I stood with the petals on my toes and pressed my palm flat and hard against her heart. I live in a hive of darkness, and you are my mother," I told her. "You are the mother of thousands." So she seeks comfort in Mary as the Holy Mother. And then after some time passes and after May's funeral, then Mary Day comes around, and it is the Feast of the Assumption, a special remembrance for the Lady of Chains. And the Daughters of Mary are going to be having this big celebration when they reenact wrapping up Mary in chains. And then after the whole ceremony, there's a part where Lily just walks off and Zach goes after her. And then she tells him about how when she was younger there were these boys that made her wear these little fish around her neck, and that she had to stay in the pond with these fish dying around her neck. And then she asks Zach if jail changed him, and he says sometimes he's just so angry. And she says, but you won't be like them. And he says, I don't want to, me either. And then it says, he bent his face close to mine and kissed me. At first it was like moth wings brushing my lips, then his mouth opening on mine. I gave way against him. He kissed me gently, but at the same time hungrily, and I liked how he tasted, the scent of his skin, the way his lips opened and closed, opened and closed. I was floating on a river of light, escorted by fish, jeweled with fish, and even with so much beautiful aching inside my body, with life throbbing beneath my skin and the rushing waves of love taking over, even with all of that, I could feel the fish dying against my heart. And then afterwards, Zach says how he's going to get good grades and go off to college and work hard to become a lawyer, and Lily says she knows he'll do it. And then he says, we can't be together now, Lily, but one day after I've gone away and become somebody, I'm going to find you and we'll be together then. You promise? I promise. So it's a really sweet moment. And then Lily finally has the courage, because this whole time she was lying about who she was. When she first got there, she said her name was Lily Williams, and that Rosaline was just a family friend, and she didn't say about how Rosaline had gone to jail. And so then she confesses everything because she was afraid this whole time. And at first she had asked May if she had remembered her mother, Deborah Fontenelle. And then May says, oh yes, she used to stay in the honey house. And then she finally talks to August and shows August a picture of her mother. And August says how when she first saw Lily, she thought she looked like her mother, because it turns out August had worked for her mother's family when her mother was young as a housekeeper. And then when she got older and when she married T. Ray, and then eventually it just caught up with her that she was unhappy, and she went to go live with August for a bit. And that's when Lily finds out, sadly, that her mother did leave her, but it was only for a few months, and then she comes back. But in that moment, Lily is just so heartbroken and so angered and so hurt that she just can't accept it, doesn't want to accept the truth. But then August tries to explain to her that everyone makes mistakes, that your mother was not herself then. But Lily's just so upset. But then she just tells her everything, and that eventually, after a few months, she missed her and wanted to go back. So then Lily realizes she went back for her that day, when sadly Lily was the one that ended up accidentally killing her when she was only 4. And then when she finally begins to come to terms with all of these feelings that she's just newly discovering, all the truth about her mother, then August also shows her a box with all of her mother's old belongings, a hairbrush and a little compact mirror and a book of English poetry that August had given her. And then the last thing is a picture frame, and it says, when she passed it to me, she held onto my hands for a second. The frame contained a picture of a woman in profile, her head bent toward a little girl who sat in a high chair with a smudge of baby food on the side of her mouth. The woman's hair curled in 40 directions, beautiful, like it had just had its 100 strokes. She held a baby spoon in her right hand. Light glazed her face. The little girl wore a bib with a teddy bear on it. A sprig of hair on top of her head was tied with a bow. She lifted one hand toward the woman, me and my mother. I didn't care about anything on this earth except the way her face was tipped toward mine, our noses just touching, how wide and gorgeous her smile was, like sparklers going off. She had fed me with a tiny spoon. She had rubbed her nose against mine and poured her light on my face. And then she says, I looked down at the picture, then closed my eyes. I figured May must have made it to heaven and explained to my mother about the sign I wanted, the one that would let me know I was loved. Because Lily this whole time just wanted that sign of her mother's love. Like when at one point she's saying, if I close my eyes or if a bird comes within the next 10 seconds, that is my mother telling me she loves me. She's searching so desperately for the sign. And then she's seeking all of this comfort, and whether it's from touching Mary's heart or from hearing all of these stories and the truth about her mother. And then finally August tells her regarding Mary, she says, Our Lady is not some magical being out there somewhere like a fairy godmother. She's not the statue in the parlor. She's something inside of you. Do you understand what I'm telling you? And then she goes on to say, You have to find a mother inside yourself. We all do. Even if we already have a mother, we still have to find this part of ourselves inside. She held out her hands to me. Give me your hand. And then she takes Lily's hand and she puts it against her own heart. And she says, You don't have to put your hand on Mary's heart to get strength and consolation and rescue and all the other things we need to get through life. You can place it right here on your own heart, your own heart. And then she says, This Mary I'm talking about sits in your heart all day long, saying, Lily, you are my everlasting home. Don't you ever be afraid. I am enough. We are enough. So that it's this power inside her. And really, she does this all herself, that she escapes this terrible life with her father, T-Ray, and she saves Rosaline because she loves her. She's a friend to her, more than just a housekeeper. And Rosaline herself, her journey is complete when she finally does register to vote. She goes to finish what she starts when she registers to vote. And then when T-Ray shows up, because Lily had called him earlier on a collect call because she wanted to know if he knew her favorite color, and he's just shouting at her saying, Where are you? And then she says that she's staying with the Boatwrights and with Rosaline, that they love her and they'll protect her. And then he says, Good riddance, and he leaves. And then she asks him before he leaves, though, if she's the one who really killed her mother, and he says, You didn't mean to do it, but you did. And then she says, I watched till he was gone from sight, then turned and looked at August and Rosaline and the daughters on the porch. This is the moment I remember clearest of all, how I stood in the driveway looking back at them. I remember the sight of them standing there waiting, all these women, all this love, waiting. So then she has a new life now, living with August and going to school, and now having the courage and the strength and love within herself and from August and all of these women, that she found what she was looking for, finding the strength and the love and feeling valued and feeling that she is worthy of love, that she found the love from her mother that she's been seeking all her life, that she always wanted to believe deep down, and that it was there. And so the power of Mother Mary and the power of sending love in terms of the bees and just love for yourself, love and compassion and hope. And as she says, and there they were, all these mothers. I have more mothers than any 8 girls off the street. They are the moons shining over me. And it's just absolutely beautiful, truly lovely, and capturing the power of what it means to find a mother's love. And with that, that is going to conclude this week's episode of Storytelling Saga. You can follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Storytelling Saga, as well as on Twitter at Storytell Saga. You can also send me any questions, comments, or writing prompts by leaving me a message in the contact section of storytellingsaga.com or by sending me an email at storytellingsaga@gmail.com. Next week, the 21st century is a very dangerous century. I will be discussing Rocco's Modern Life, Static Cling, with special guest Sylvie. Until then, thank you for listening, and remember, write what you love.